For coming along again.
Nice
to see you. It is a pretty blunt message, and the message is, yes, of course we'll listen to what you have to say when we understand what you have to say, but in the meantime, this negotiation is not going to be reopened. Now, that can't come as a surprise to you.
No, but they are negotiating. They're going to take a strong position to start with, and they'll have to listen. But the Prime Minister last night got a very clear mandate, which the European Union will have to listen to, that she's got to go back and has got to totally renegotiate the backstop with legal text. And that was a very clear message.
A legal text outside the agreement or inside the agreement?
Within the agreement. And
right.
if that doesn't go through, it's quite clear, she made it very clear, we will have another opportunity to vote on the 15th of February, and if it's not changed, it won't go through, and they have to recognise that.
What does the Prime Minister take to Brussels as an idea? Just give us a sense, because, you know, lots of people watching will think, well, yeah, OK, where is the clarity on this alternative? Where is it?
Well, I think you go right back. The British people were given the right to choose. Members of Parliament said, we will give you back the power of decision. And 17.4 million people voted to leave. Mm-hmm. We then had a general election in which the Prime Minister made it very clear that the Prime Minister would deliver leave by leaving the single market, leaving the customs union, and leaving the remit of the ECJ, the European Court of Justice. And the negotiated withdrawal agreement at the moment does not deliver that, and that's why it was overwhelmingly defeated. And I think what's very interesting last night, which your discussion just now touched on, there were 25 Labour rebels. If you look at the top 100 marginal seats, which the Labour Party has got to win if it ever wants to be in government, 78% of them, or 78 of them, are to leave. 73 of them are very strongly to leave. And you're beginning to see that. You're going to see Labour MPs wake up. They are very much involved in this process. And there is a convergence. So the Prime Minister has a strong hand to go back with.
OK, back to the question, clarity on what she takes to Brussels as an alternative to the backstop. Now, you know the Irish context very well, given your former ministerial responsibilities. What does the Prime Minister offer to Brussels as an alternative to the backstop? What is it?
Well, I was involved in writing the ERG paper, which we published back in September. And which I sent to Monsieur Barnier, and which I had a very constructive meeting when I took David Trimble and others over to discuss it. And we make it very clear that there is a border now. There is a VAT border, there's an excise duty border, very relevant to Diageo and Guinness shipments. There is a currency border, there's a security border. And it's all done without any infrastructure on the border. So quite rightly, the British government, the Irish government, the European Union also, there will be no physical infrastructure. You don't need it to maintain a border at the moment. You won't need it in the future using existing techniques and existing processes and existing European customs law. We're quite clear about that. And we would like to see those suggestions adopted. Now, no one has picked holes in them. We've had meetings in Downing Street.
We've had up by your own government.
We've had senior.
They didn't adopt them.
They did. They sent senior customs officials along to us to get advice from our guys who have long experience. I've literally just come from a meeting in my office with another senior figure in the freight forwarding industry who, totally out of the blue, wrote to me, wanted to come and see me, and endorsed our paper. Now, that is the basis on which we should go ahead. Let's talk about unicorns. Let's talk about wild technology. There is absolutely nothing new in our paper back in September. These are all existing techniques. It's thoroughly boring, and it works.
Well, you will forgive viewers for watching this thinking, why on earth hasn't this brilliant plan been adopted? Why on earth has this not been adopted by the government in full, if it's this simple, and by Brussels? Why on earth are we into this backstop saga that we're in at the moment, if you have the plan ready, up and running?
That is a very good question, which is frustrating
me. What's the
me.
answer to it?
Well, I think there's an idea that the only solution to this is to keep us in some form of customs union. And don't forget, there is a strong belief amongst those who voted to remain that the next best bet is to keep us in the customs union. We know that there are strong voices in Dublin who hate Brexit and think the best thing they can do is to use this as a mechanism to keep us in the customs union. Now, that sadly runs straight into the demand of the 17.4 million, and the people are unmoved. You know, I've stopped on trains, I'm stopped in the street by saying, we are going to leave, aren't we? And just get on with it, are the most common statements. So the people, I think, are miles ahead of us.
And you don't think there are any concerns at all? Those who are, you know, explaining what their position on the backstop is, that they have concerns about the viability and the security of the Good Friday Agreement, and that is their main concern. That's why they are adhering to this as firmly as they are.
No, I think very much it's the opposite. If you listen to David Trimble, who was one of the architects of the agreement got a Nobel Prize for it. If you listen to Paul Bew, whose paper came out this week, it is exactly the opposite. The current agreement is a grotesque breach of the most fundamental principle of the Belfast Agreement, which is the principle of consent. David Trimble and the Unionists had a huge battle persuading Unionists to vote in the referendum, and they got it through on the grounds that the status of Northern Ireland would never change without the consent of the people of Northern Ireland. And what the withdrawal agreement does, it creates something appalling called UK brackets NI, a totally new political entity where law will be imposed on people in Northern Ireland, which is different to law in the rest of the UK, and in which they have no mechanism. There's not be a single elected official who they could vote for who could change that law. Now, Paul Bew is a great expert, big Remainer, and he is very clear that this is very, very damaging to the agreement, whereas there's not going to be infrastructure on the border. We had a terrible time during the Troubles. We had 27,000 armed police and military personnel, and it was still porous. So that's not going to happen. It's simply not going to happen. There will not be physical infrastructure. All can be done by pre-clearance using existing techniques which are used around Europe at the moment.
A final point, which is that if the Prime Minister comes back in mid-February and she's not been able to negotiate in the way that she'd like, where are we then? What happens then? We're heading towards a no deal.
Well, I think if it comes back in a similar state as it is at the moment, the withdrawal agreement will be voted down. And then you head for what you describe as no deal, what would be called sort of managed World Trade Organization terms. I think it's a real priority that the government, I've talked to senior members of the government about this, they must accelerate the programme of statutory instrument through Parliament. They've got several hundred to get through. These can be got through really quite rapidly. And the only way of ensuring that there is no deal, bizarrely, is to ensure that no deal is still there, because that will bring the European Union to the talks.
Precisely what your colleagues voted against last night.
Yeah, that was advisory.
But it's a vote in the Commons, yes.
Yeah, yes, but we voted down the Grieve and the Cooper amendments, which would have put the whole question off for years. The only way to bring the European Union to a real talks is to keep the pressure and the threat of, quote, no deal or World Trade Organization terms. That is really important.
Mr. Paterson, good of you to join us. Thank you very much.